is a question that I receive so frequently in our programs when we're talking about diversity and inclusion and authenticity. And people say, beyond having a diversity hire and beyond having unconscious bias training, what else is there? And I thought, the very best person to talk to about this is Jennifer Brown. She's the author of Inclusive Leaders. She works with leaders all over the world on their D&I initiatives. So Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us. And what advice would you have?
Well, I think there is a bad habit of outsourcing the inclusion of our workplace to training as the cure-all for everything, which we know that it's not. Training is not systems change, which is what we need. And hiring diverse talent in sort of broadly defined is also not necessarily the whole solve. It's a great first step, but we often talk about diversity is being asked to the dance and inclusion is being asked to dance. Those are two very different things. And this is a quote from Verna Myers that a lot of us talk about in our field. So it's a question of, if you bring people in, can you keep them? And are they set up to thrive? And that is where inclusion kicks in. That's where belonging kicks in. And it's, I think in many ways, the more complicated work, because changing cultures is a complicated endeavor.
Yes. Oh, that's such a beautiful metaphor. Yeah. So how do you make sure people feel good about dancing?
And bring their best dance moves.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of the ultimate of the equation, right? You take diversity, which is the mix, and inclusion is making the mix work.
Yeah.
And then I would say belonging is the result of doing this really well, is that people feel so relaxed and comfortable, and they feel that psychological safety that we all need to feel in order to create, right, to our highest potential. And so cultures of belonging where everyone can thrive, which is the subtitle of my book, How to Be an Inclusive Leader, means that we don't put the onus for all the sort of efforts to belong. We don't put the onus on the people that don't belong, that feel that they don't belong. That we all of us take responsibility for this, and don't assume training is going to do the work for us, right? Don't, assume that, oh, well, I hired XYZ number of women or people of color. I don't know why they're leaving. Like really be honest about that, and then question and interrogate what are the factors that we need to change in this culture to enable people to feel more comfortable here. And I think that it gets down to, there's so many inputs to that. There's a lot of little things, and there's big things too, like promotions, advancement, how people are mentored and sponsored and literally pulled up the pipeline. Even that alone, if you just isolate one change, I would recommend, it's to truly, especially in the virtual world of the pandemic, to identify and foster diverse talent intentionally, overtly, intentionally up the pipeline. And in order to do that, you've got to be intentional about it. And there has to be some proactive power sharing, and I would say professional capital sharing on the part of people who have the capital and the people that typically are not seen as the future leaders, right? That aren't visible, that aren't, there aren't a lot of them, so we need to literally invest in this diverse talent to ensure that people stay long enough to achieve the kinds of leadership roles that would then diversify the top of the house, as we refer to it. And that's when real change is going to start to happen. Because right now, most diversity that is moving up the pipeline falls out of the pipeline. Because of belonging issues, because of the difficulty of constant microaggressions and unconscious bias in the organization on the part of leaders. And, we just have these like fundamental lack of understanding of each other's lives and how to be empathetic with each other. And I knew this before the pandemic, of course, like this is what we work on. But I think that the pandemic has given us a really amazing opportunity actually to build deeper relationships that are based on each other's truths. More than ever before. And I think we're really, really getting underneath, do I bring my full self to work? Yeah. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Am I afraid to do it? If I'm not afraid to do it, who else is afraid to do it? What am I hiding? What do I feel is not going to be acceptable? And these are big things: mental health, bias that I'm experiencing, exclusion, um, the fact that my family is being impacted adversely and disproportionately because I have frontline responders, because I identify as a Black American, because there is like a lot going on for some of us right now that's not going on for others. And we must generate an understanding that we never forget through this experience, and just be more honest about that and bring that into that workplace of the future that we're all hopefully going to create a more inclusive future coming out of this.
Yeah, I think it seems to me that we are on an acceleration here because
Yeah.
it is harder. People are being forced to disclose, right? Because we're zooming into your house and your toddler is climbing into your lap, or you're having to run to help an elderly parent, and all of these things that you might have just not talked about at work are suddenly on camera for everyone to see.
Because I think the very definition of productivity is being challenged. And for some of us, we're highly productive right now because we are, I would say, comfortable, right? Maybe we're not homeschooling multiple kids, right? Where your performance might be going down because you just may not have the hours, you may not have the bandwidth, you may not have the mental health, right? You may not have the support. You may be grieving and struggling with people who are in harm's way every single day in your immediate family, in your extended family, in your community. So there's so many derailers of that traditional notion of productivity right now. So I think we've got to redefine it. I think we've got to give people a lot of space right now.
Mhm.
And we've got to get creative. If you're a people manager, you should be thinking about reapportioning work. You should be thinking about, does this actually need to get done in the same way, in the same time frame,
Yeah.
by the same people that have always done it? So cross training is really important. But I also want to caution all of us. We've got to figure out a way to not just shift the burden of the overwork to others who maybe don't have human children that are of schooling age right now, right? So there's a whole kind of backlash, interestingly, that I'm hearing about. It's not widespread, but I think it's creeping up on us, which is that how do we actually ensure a fair apportioning of work,
Yeah.
given that we all have such radically different capacity right now?
Yeah.
Right? Both in terms of hours, mental capacity, emotional capacity. How do I, as a people manager, ensure that that I am supporting people one by one, because everyone's going to need different support right now? And how am I making sure I'm not just creating different unfair interdependencies? And I think that I don't have a magic answer for that. But if you are thinking about that and you're sensitive to that, and you're not shifting the burden and sort of causing an overwork on the other side, and the pendulum is swinging this way and that way, this is a really shifting time. And also empathy is coming to the fore for leaders. Vulnerability. I always say, don't assume you have to be the unassailable, perfect leader with it all under control right now. I think realness is really, really building trust right now. And there are many leaders that are not comfortable leading that way, because that hasn't really been something we've focused on or rewarded or even encouraged in our leaders. But now is the time to kind of dig deep and like broaden the palette with
Yeah.
which you lead every day, and know that others will actually really appreciate that you don't have the answers.
Yes.
Right now is the era of the powerful questions because that is all we can do. And I know you focus on that in your work. And, so I think a powerful question is better any day than answers, because right now answers, I'm not sure, really have a lot of meaning because they're very short term, and things are going to continue to shift.
Yeah.
That's going to, things are going to come back in some form, and the war for talent is not abating.
Right.
Even though we might feel that, we can rest right now, actually, there are certain companies that are poaching talent left and right now. They are growing fast. So sadly, I cannot say we can rest on our laurels when it comes to the best and brightest. And so that best and brightest is going to be experiencing this moment in a variety of ways and going to need a variety of support. And we've got to double down on our strategies right now. Now is not the time to sideline diversity, equity, and inclusion work. It's actually the time to lead with it.
I totally agree with you. Jennifer, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure
You're
to talk to you.
welcome. Thanks for having me on.